received some concerns recently about the barrenness of the room I'm in. I would like to point out that the walls are indeed bare, but I have done much decoration because it seemed to concern some people tremendously that the walls are so bare. So there's a calendar. Now, moving on, today we're going to be talking about this pen, which was kindly sent to me by Pen Chalet, Ron. I reached out to Ron. I said I got a lot of review requests for this pen, which is true. So, here we go. The platinum, I don't know, I get French, I don't know. The platinum Prefounte. I'm probably going to say Prefounte, or Prefounte. Prefounte. That pen. The Platinum Prefounte, an interesting pen which has, in my mind, all kinds of things going for it. It is, first of all, inexpensive. I know this pen wasn't in here, I'm sorry, I'm holding up this box if that means anything. I have the pen here, I'm so sorry. I will talk a bit about the pen, I will show you the parts, I will do a writing sample, I will tell you what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and then we'll do a writing sample. Let's get started. Okay, so let's have a look at the Prefounte. I'm sorry, that's just, I think that's the easiest way I can say it. It comes in a little box, right, very simple. I tried to cut it open in such a way that I could show you the contents more or less. It's 0.5mm nib. The box just has the pen, the cap, and then a cartridge in it. This is a $10 pen, so this is definitely an affordable model, I would say. And this is the sort of the paperwork that comes with it. 1 year no dry, that's a lie. After about a week capped, it is dry and unusable, at least this particular model is, so that's great, but that's not really how it works, the slip and seal. It has instructions on how to put the cartridge in, and you're only supposed to use platinum ink, which of course is what every brand will tell you. Okay, now the actual pen, here we have it. I will zoom in a bit so you can see the parts a bit better. We have this right next to a Pilot Metropolitan, so you can see it's a reasonably sized pen. It's not huge, it's not tiny, it's just a normally sized pen. They come in a couple of colors. This is a dark blue, which I like. It is translucent, you can probably see it, right? You can see the nib a little bit, that kind of stuff, which is kind of neat. And there's a couple of things that I kind of like about it. So just going over the pen, the top here, the finial, same material as the rest of the pen. We have a metal clip, which is nice, the P.R.E, Platinum P.R.E, the famous, I think, $4 platinum pen, has a plastic clip, so this is nice, it's a little bit of an upgrade. It says Prefounte. We have the barrel that tapers down ever so slightly, and on the back here it says 0.5M platinum made in Japan. The cap comes off. This is their slip and seal mechanism, which again in this case doesn't seem to work. I've tried this a number of times. In a week or under, the pen ceases to write when it is not used, so that will immediately start up after a year. That is quite frankly nonsense. On the nib it says P for platinum 0.5. The feed is this interesting sort of all-around feed that is also used on the P.R.E. Steel nib, which looks a lot like the P.R.E. nib. We have the barrel, it unscrews, and again the pen comes with a cartridge. The pen writes very pleasantly. I had to do quite a bit of work to get it to write. I did clean it, and when I put the cartridge in, as is described with the section down, etc., ink came up to about here, and it needs to go farther for the pen to actually write, so it probably took about 10 or 15 minutes of fiddling, but then it did write. And all of this for $10. Now, if we see how it writes, one thing I noticed as I was writing with this pen, let me zoom out a little bit, is that it is actually, excuse me, a very pleasant writer. It's a nice nib, so this is the 0.5mm, so yeah, fine medium nib. I would say this is a really nice medium, actually. Steel nib, ABS feed, pretty nice. And the ink is just the platinum blue-black that in the cartridge that came with it. Now it's a pleasant writer because it's really nice and really quite smooth, which I thought was very pleasant to use. I found this a nice writer, a pleasant writer. It's just a little bit of fiddling to get it started. I do apologize, something in my throat. Fast writing, you see, it keeps up well. I would think that this is a pen that would really benefit from using it with a converter, and the converter is sold for, I think, $6 on sale right now at Pen Chalet, and I think it would be useful because then you suck up ink into the section saturating, and I think it would write straight away. I think it's the cartridge here that made things a little difficult. And also, by the way, I thought that was really cool. I didn't know those things existed, but you can buy an adapter because the platinum cartridges are proprietary to platinum. You can buy an adapter, and then you can put international cartridges in it. So that's kind of cool. I think it's $2, so that's almost nothing. Just saying, in case you want to use cartridges, but you don't want to be stuck with platinum. Not a super wet writer. I also don't have the feeling this is the wettest ink in the world, by the way. So that's an option, but I would probably consider getting a converter, which is almost as expensive as the pen, but you know, it's an inexpensive pen. A little bit of line variation, yeah, really not that much. I also have no issues pushing this quite hard, given that this is not a very expensive pen. Don't expect much in ways of line variation. It's a pretty rigid nib. Okay, well, oh no, upside down, right? Reverse writing works well and pretty smoothly and turns it into a finer nib. So for those of you who like that, that is actually a very nice way to do it. That made absolutely no sense. That's because I was focused on this. I mean, this is a nice pen that will give you a medium and a fine nib in one go. Okay, that is the Prefounte. Let's talk about what I like and what I don't like about this pen. Let's do it. Okay, what do I like, what do I not like about the Platinum Prefounte? I think the pen has a couple of things going for it that it's very nice. It's a nice pen. It's a starter model Platinum pen, but it's a bit of an upgrade from the Pre.E. Simply, if nothing else, because it has that metal clip. And overall, I think it looks quite nice and surprisingly refined, especially from a distance. It doesn't look particularly plasticky to me, even though it's a plastic pen. Up close, maybe a little different. It feels like a plastic pen. It would be weird if a plastic pen felt like a metal pen, but I think you know what I mean. Some plastic pens, if you've held some inexpensive pens, feel quite cheap. And this pen, I honestly have to say, does not, in my mind, feel cheap. They've really done a nice job with that. So that's really cool. The nib, I will say, is very smooth. It's a very pleasant writer, and I was quite pleasantly surprised by how smoothly it writes. Really impressive, especially for a $10 pen. I think it is the Pre.E nib, and the Pre.E is sold for $4, so you can get it even more cheaply. But having said that, I do think that is nice. I was expecting something scratchier given the price, just less polished, but it works very well. Things I don't like about it so much, one thing is not an entirely fair criticism maybe, but it does have a proprietary filling system, so you can't put an international short cartridge in unless, as I said, you buy that converter that you can put in, adapter, sorry, that's an unclear term in this context, an adapter you can put in and then you can use international cartridges, which would be nice. But if you don't have that, then you don't, you're stuck with platinum cartridges. The platinum converter is of course available, but is $6 and the pen is $10, so that might not be worth it for everyone. If you happen to already have a platinum converter lying around, that might be a nice way to, of course, extend the ink repertoire, unless you want to refill cartridges and that kind of stuff. But anyway, My biggest issue with the pen was that as a cartridge writer, something that uses cartridges, it's very hard to get it started. You can insert, these cartridges actually have a metal ball in them. You put it in like that, and for me, again, ink came up to about this level where it needed to be up to that level for the pen to write. It took a lot of fiddling. Now, typically what I did, this is what our teachers did back in primary school in the Netherlands, where we wrote with fountain pens. If a pen wouldn't write, you put a cartridge in, they take out the cartridge, they put it on the nib, and then just squeeze a little bit, getting a little bit of ink under the feed, so in between the feed and the nib, and then it writes. Now, the problem is, these cartridges are made of a very hard plastic that doesn't compress that easily. I can squeeze it, I can compress it, but as I said, not very easily. And the result of that is that it is not that easy to get the pen to write. Now, if you were to use a converter, you would dip the whole section in ink, you would draw up ink, the feed would saturate, it would not be a big issue. I don't mean to make something huge out of something small, but it really was about a 10-15 minute job for me to get this pen to write, which I find disproportionately long. I don't typically spend that much time on it. Even in pens with cartridges, I typically I leave the cartridge in, squeeze the end of the cartridge, some ink saturates the feed, and it writes. So I don't know if it is this particular exemplar of the Prefounte that did that, but it was interesting. The other issue, and that in my mind is a bigger issue, is that slip and seal mechanism that Platinum really always flaunts a bit. That is supposed to keep your pen, when you cap it, it's supposed to keep it writing for a year, so you cannot use it for a year, take off the cap and write. I have heard of people online who have indeed experienced that with Platinum pens, but this isn't one of them. As I said, look, my job here is to be brutally honest. A week in, the pen stops writing because it's just dried out. And then you have another 15 minutes ahead of you trying to get it to write again because the cartridges can't be compressed, and etc. Right? Is it a massive issue? I don't know. If you write with your pen every day, then it's probably really not an issue. If you use converters, maybe that slip and seal mechanism works better because, again, then you have saturated the feed more. But I've been using this pen for weeks, and every time I had the same issue. After a couple of days, it was dry. It could also be this particular ink. I'm not very familiar with the Platinum Blue Black because I haven't used it before in my recollection. Maybe it's a drier ink. Maybe that compounds the problem. Not 100% sure. What I would really appreciate is if you have a Prefounte, if you could leave a comment to express whether you've experienced this issue of drying out, because that's useful for people who are considering buying the pen, because then they have other experiences as well. After all, I only have one, right? So I mean, it could just be this particular model. Maybe this one just has that, and all the other ones are fine. But I have no way of figuring that out without your input. So I'd be much obliged for that. Having said all of that, let's not forget this is a $10 pen. So I do think we have to take some things maybe with a bit of a grain of salt. It's a $10 pen, and $10 is not a whole lot as fountain pens go. So I think it's a good pen. I think it's a solid pen. I think it's a nice pen that writes wonderfully. The nib is incredibly smooth and really pleasant. I just had a bit of an issue with the ink delivery system. Not while it writes, because as it writes, it doesn't run dry, it doesn't skip, it doesn't do anything bad. It's just that getting it to write, especially after a few days of non-use, that was a bit of an issue. But when it writes, and it writes beautifully. So, I hope this was useful. A very kind thank you to Pen Chalet for sending me the pen. I really appreciate it. And I hope this was useful. Hit myself. And I'll gladly see you later. Bye-bye.